iPhone, the very first generation of a slab of glass and metal that changed not only the industry, but I think it's fair to say it changed the world. Now, this wasn't my first iPhone. My first was a 3GS. So I'm not super sentimental about the 2G because I didn't get to use one until later in life. But I do have a great amount of respect for just how groundbreaking it was for the time. And it's so groundbreaking that even today, there's still the same sort of standard between this and the most modern phone. Here's a 15 Plus. The home screen layout is still vastly the same. You know, there's more customization that you can do, but generally you can have it basically the same. The app functionality is also very similar, especially when you compare them side by side. A lot of the apps still have the same layout. I just swiped up. It doesn't work. Gotta hit a button. And then, of course, the button layout is still very similar, if not the same. Now, again, this has changed a little bit, but for the most part, it's still pretty much the same. And the design of the phone itself is just truly timeless. I mean, look at this. This metal with the black band below. Now, this is for the antenna, obviously, but it's just so sleek and sexy. Like, even now, design aside with this phone, there's no getting around the fact that it is very, very old. Apple dropped support for it over 15 years ago, but it still functions. It still turns on, and it's still technically usable. So what can we do to make it more usable in the modern age? There are a few ground rules I've placed on this project before we get started. My goal is to keep this phone as vanilla as possible to stay true to the experience of what using this phone was like originally back in the late 2000s. Now, with that being said, mods are necessary to keep this challenge possible. A given from the start is that this phone is both jailbroken and unlocked. However, the only jailbreak tweaks installed are those that add functionality to the phone. No tweaks to change the aesthetics, such as themes, home screen wallpapers, or the like are installed. While it does make the phone look more modern, it's already slow and unstable as it is, as you'll see plenty of that throughout this video, I'm sure. Outside of that, there are no physical changes to this phone. It still has the same OEM screen, battery, and case. Now, the phone we'll be using for this project is a top-of-the-line model with 16 gigabytes of storage. That was announced as an upgrade to the already existing 8 gigabyte model. The 4 gigabyte model was discontinued at that same time. Now, this 16 gigabyte model went for $500, and the price still required a 2-year contract with AT&T. Now, adjusting for inflation, this phone would have been about a $720 phone today. Now that hardware is out of the way, let's focus on the functionality of this phone. When Steve Jobs first announced the iPhone to the world in 2007, the infamous keynote featured 3 pillars this phone would be built on.
3 things: a widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communications device.
Now, these are the same 3 pillars that this video will focus on, bringing each up to a modern standard as best as possible. The first and most important function of a phone is to be, well, a phone. So we'll focus on that pillar first. One of the more controversial aspects of this phone is that it's only able to use slower and older 2G networks, especially because at the time, 3G networks were becoming very common and accessible. Nowadays, none of that really matters because 3G was shuttered years ago, and here in the US, 2G is barely hanging on with the plug about to be pulled, the only remaining network being T-Mobile here in the US, and it's very clear they don't want you using it. Long story short, I have a box full of SIM cards trying to get this phone working just for this video. Every single one either got booted right away or it just straight up wouldn't join, period. Unless the SIM is inactive, in which case it would go on the network for just a little bit, and then it would kick you off yet again. Now, keen viewers will notice that this phone has full bars. So, what gives? Well, it's clear they don't want me using any official networks, so I built my own. Now, there are an incredible amount of disclaimers to go with this, and I'm not going to get too deep into how this works, but let's just say this project was built within the confines of the law for demonstration purposes only at an incredibly low power in a controlled environment. So please don't try to recreate what you see here at home unless you know what you're doing. I do want to make a full video with more details on how this project works because it was really fun to build. So let me know in the comments if that's something you want to see. Basically, this base station brings back a lot of the same functionality of the actual phone services, such as SMS texting. So if I wanted to text this phone, the phone number for this one is 11030. If I wanted to say hello world and send, it should, in theory, work on this phone at some point. There it goes. So, texting works. So besides texting, you can also call with this phone. It's the same phone number for everything. So if it's 100, 1030, that should go right over to here. And I'm getting a phone call from 4. Only to phones within the same network, of course. Now, the space station does have the ability to go beyond that. If you want to include a Google Voice number for this phone, you can integrate that. And the phone calls are done over Asterisk, which is an open source phone routing software that you can also add like VoIP phones to or other service to make this phone function as an actual phone. That's another video that I could make. And you're going to want to take a shot every time I say that. There's a lot to cover with this phone. But anyway, we're getting distracted. We have to move on to the next subject, which is using this phone as a modern iPod. Any device from like 2001 and on is going to be a pretty decent iPod at this point. Even iPods themselves are basically just MP3 players, and there's not a whole lot more to add to make them more usable. They already are. This will be the easiest portion of this video for sure because we're already most of the way there. Those of you that remember this phone launching will remember the infamous headphone jack problem. Steve Jobs admitted that this was a mistake to do a recessed headphone jack. And on the 3G, this is a 3GS, but it's the same style, you can tell they fixed it. It's no longer a recessed headphone jack that could only be used by Apple's own EarPods at the time, and other headphones with recessed jack capability. Now, back in the day, Belkin came up with this as their solution to fix it. And I love it because Steve Jobs must have just saw this and just said, yeah, that's what I wanted my phone to look like. That's the aesthetic that I wanted. Absolutely. But nowadays we have a little bit more of like a modern solution is to add this little dongle here. We love our dongles as Apple people. It makes it usable and bearable if you wanted to use it with actual headphones. But this is still stupid. The original design behind this was to actually use it with cases that embed the headphone jack to make it a recessed by design headphone jack, but it works perfectly here. These are available on Amazon for really cheap. But who wants a cable? That's dumb. We have AirPods now. And we're way past wires at this point. This was Apple's concession for removing the headphone jack, which ended up being like one of their most popular products, as funny as that is. Some people got made fun of for wearing these when they first come out, and now they're everywhere. So what do they have to do with the 2G? Well, the 2G does actually have Bluetooth built in and vanilla without any modifications. iOS 3.1.3 can connect via Bluetooth to AirPods. It doesn't work like you think it would because the Bluetooth can only handle calls. So both with AirPods and if you wanted to connect this to your car over Bluetooth, you could do phone calls, which is pretty cool. That's not something to ignore. But music doesn't work. The hardware and software just wasn't there to do music streaming over this phone. That didn't come until the 3GS when you could actually pair this with Bluetooth headphones. Music will work, including with AirPods. The 3GS natively supports AirPods, both with music playback and phone calls. And the jailbreak community is fast at work making tweaks to actually add full AirPod functionality to the 3GS, which I actually think is really cool. And that's yet again another video that could be designed at some point. But that's pretty cool. We've got the 2G here and it can use AirPods for calling, but what if we wanted to do more than that? Well, there is a solution, and like everything with Apple, it comes in the shape of a dongle. We love our dongles. This is dongle number 2 for this video, but we're not giving up yet. Once you get this plugged in, this bad boy starts blinking. Oh, look, the play button starts up. It actually recognizes, hey, this is a music device, and it pairs instantly with the AirPods. I don't actually know if this is working. I need to try this. Oh, it works. So as you can tell, taking it out of the ears doesn't really do anything. They still work. That functionality doesn't exactly translate over. But surprisingly, double clicking does. You can double click to the next track. It's the same thing as like the old iPods back in the day with the button hanging down, or you can triple click. There we go. Triple click goes back, 2 clicks goes forward, and then 1 click pauses and 1 click goes forward. 1 click plays. You can also hold the stem and noise cancellation does turn on, or you can hold it yet again and do the adaptive noise cancellations that you can hear everything around you, or transparency mode, whichever one you prefer. So a lot of the same functionality that you would expect from these still works on the original iPhone with just a little bit of help from a dongle. This is a great way to take your new recycled iPod and use them with AirPods if you really wanted to. Another great way to listen to music is over AirPlay. Now, this phone, again, doesn't support AirPlay. Back in the time, it was actually called AirTunes. But either way, that didn't come again until I think the iPhone 3GS. There's a bit of a workaround with this phone with the Apple Remote app. This app actually still works with modern Macs, including Apple Music, not just iTunes. This brings up your entire, not only iTunes library, I thought this was really cool. This is your Apple Music library that is fully available to you on your phone, wherever you want to go. It's basically the same player, just with a little AirPlay icon that's added that should have been there to begin with, but it's not. So that's a nice little roundabout way to bring AirPlay back to this phone. And besides that, this also adds Apple Music compatibility, because your entire Apple Music library is not only playable, but searchable from this app. Okay, so we went from the easiest category to now the more challenging, internet usability. Browsers have changed tremendously in the past 15 years, and by now certificates on this phone are all but expired. SSL, it doesn't exist on this phone anymore. To an extent, I will jump in here and show you that there are options from third parties that are actually pretty neat. If you go, I'll link these somehow. But down to profiles, you can actually add certificates back, which I believe adds them it does bring back some functionality to this phone. It doesn't fix everything, of course, but it does make it at least a little bit more usable. Now, Safari, that's pretty gone. Nothing works in Safari, with the exception of Google for some reason, but any link you try and open in Google, it's going to end up in this. So Safari is a pretty dead end, but there is a way around that with Opera Mini. Now, Opera Mini is an app that you can download through the Internet Archive, and that will bring you to a more modern web browser. I think this is as modern as you can get, and shockingly, it actually works pretty well. YouTube is one of the only things on this that's just straight up doesn't work, which is really unfortunate because I really miss YouTube, and it's one of the things that I would want out of this. This is probably as good as it's going to get for this phone, and even though it's not, it's a mess, but it does technically work, and a lot of sites work better than you would expect, so it does bring web browser capabilities back to this, kind of. It's better than it used to be, so Opera Mini is a great option for that. Surprisingly, Mail still works, because, I mean, email is old, and not a lot has changed. Again, there's no SSL, so there's no secure email, but you can send and receive. My personal email is on here, so I'm not going to open it. But besides that, stocks and weather are also really easy to bring back with a jailbreak tweak. There's Stocks X and Weather X. It's available through the r/legacy jailbreak FAQ. There's a person that has kind of hosted these. He's great. He's working on other X apps as well to kind of bring functionality back to them on these old phones. So not only stocks, but weather. That comes back to use here too, which is actually pretty neat. So those are functional yet again. I have mentioned YouTube throughout this video. YouTube is another app that you can bring back with jailbreak tweaks. It's a lot of work and I felt too lazy to do it. Unfortunately, the iTunes and App Store, those come and go. There are random times where the App Store will randomly just kind of come back to life, and there are jailbreak tweaks that help in that process to try and get it back. But for the most part, you're just kind of dead in the water here too, unfortunately. This is the one that actually surprised me the most, was Google Maps on an OEM vanilla install of iPhone OS 3.1.3. Google Maps still works. No SSL certs, nothing you need to do, just straight out of the box. Google Maps still works. Not only can you do this, but you can search Los Angeles, California. I mean, it's just funny how fast it is too. Even for to this day, it's still pretty reasonable. Has all your details of your city. You can look up modern businesses and they will show up, like not only Los Angeles, but like businesses themselves. Directions. Oh, I really wanted to show this. This is funny. So Las Vegas to California. This is what directions used to look like back in the day if you never used Google Maps on an original iPhone. There was no turn by turn. You had your car, you had your transit, and then you had walking. Not great at all. And like I said, there's no turn by turn. So when you hit start, you would literally just kind of follow along by hitting next up here in the corner. This was how you would navigate back in the day. There was no GPS on this phone. That didn't come along until, again, the iPhone 3GS. So this phone was just kind of stuck with guessing where you are. Actually, you couldn't even guess. It just kind of, you had to tell it where you are, and it would give you directions based on that. No help at all. This was awful. This was terrible. But it still works. You can look up modern businesses and get directions on your phone if you really want to on an iPhone 2G. So with all those apps and tweaks and modifications, including dongles or whatever else you want to add to this phone, it brings it up to being a very usable phone even to this day. Now, there's no cellular outside of this test environment, of course, and that's kind of a bummer. Wi-Fi is really hit or miss in public because a lot of Wi-Fi access points are dropping support for, I'm not sure if it's the band or if it's, I know for certain hotspots with WPA3 will not let this phone join because it doesn't have WPA3, so it can't join modern hotspots. Connectivity is the only thing that's really missing here. Using it as an iPod or a multimedia device, it's still there. Some information is obtainable, and I can kind of see a lot of people switching back to something like this. There is a bit of a trend outside of schools banning phones and causing teens to kind of go back in time with technology just a little bit, which is probably good for them. They get to see what it was like for us. A lot of people are reverting back to these legacy devices because they're so disconnected. There's no Instagram, there's no Facebook, there's no notifications outside of calls, texts, emails, calendars, contacts. Which, by the way, calendars and contacts, yeah, they still sync through your Mac in Finder. Modern day macOS Sequoia supports calendars and contacts syncing. So you can use this phone as a phone without any of the BS of a modern phone, the annoyances, the constant chronic online that we're unfortunately in at this point is avoidable going back in time into something that's just so quiet. I've been trying to see if I can live with this phone for one day. That'd be a fun video. I might do one, take a shot, because I said it again. It was really refreshing to take this phone off the charger, turn on the lock screen, and it was almost always empty. That would be like a loner kind of thing to say, but it was refreshing. It was so refreshing to not have just a bulk amount of notifications from a whole bunch of nonsense, but instead just being a phone. That's all that it did. If this worked on a cell network nowadays, I feel like it would be totally doable to port over a number or have your number divert to this one. That is the biggest challenge here, is getting past that. But besides that, totally doable. Totally doable. I love this phone. I really do. This phone will always hold just a very special place in my heart, and I'm going to continue using it.